What's going to shake out in the Bengals wide receiver 3 battle? Will Vonn Bell start, and will the Bengals go find some depth on the remaining free agent market? Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. Today, we dive into a Locked On Bengals mailbag here on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day, including Monday, which is when we're recording this episode of Locked On Bengals. Brought to you by Game Time. You can save $20 on your first purchase of tickets in the Game Time app today using promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Terms apply. And James, we've got some good questions to get into today for all the everydayers out there, for all of you out there making us your first listen. We appreciate you, and we appreciate everyone who sent in questions for today's mailbag. And there were some pretty clear themes. Multiple people asking about the same kinds of topics, James. This often happens. The fan base tends to focus on issues that are obvious or pressing to multiple people and glaring in different ways to different people. And we're going to start with a wide receiver question just for you, James. Vienna Jeff 60 and Steve Main both asking about wide receiver 3. Vienna Jeff asks, will Jermaine Burton be a natural fit for Tyler Boyd's slot position, or is he more of an outside wide receiver? And Steve Main asking for a prediction on how the wide receiver 3 battle ends up. Will Burton win that job, or will it be a rotation, including Burton and Iosivas and Charlie Jones? And he didn't write it, but I'll include Mike Gesicki as well.
That's it. That's what it will be. It's going to be a rotation. It's going to be a slot wide receiver by committee, mostly because they complement each other really, really well, and they do different things. And there are going to be times when you want explosion out of the slot, and you don't want it to be Ja'Marr Chase. Well, guess what? That can be Jermaine Burton. But expecting him to come in and be Tyler Boyd and play in the slot all the time, I don't think the Bengals anticipate that. I don't think he anticipates that. And so Charlie Jones is going to get an opportunity. Trenton Irwin, I think, will get an opportunity here to showcase what he can do at both spots. And that's why they brought him back, by the way. There was clearly some comfort there with bringing back Irwin. And Andrei Iosivas has done a little slot as well. And by the way, that could mean Iosivas playing outside and Ja'Marr Chase playing in the slot. That could be part of the rotation. Same thing with Trenton Irwin. And so I think, much like running back, where you want to be a little less predictable, I think the Bengals are going to be less predictable, more multiple, and have multiple different rotations where it's not, all right, here's the big 3, and then here are the rest of the guys. And you're right, Mike Gesicki certainly fits into that as well because of his ability to threaten each level of the defense, because of his ability to be a big slot in the red zone. Do you want Jermaine Burton in the red zone playing slot, or do you want him on the 20-yard line with 80 yards to go, running in between Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins and playing slot in that scenario? I think that's it. He's going to threaten downfield, may come off the field at times for a Mike Gesicki, for a Charlie Jones. And I think that's the question mark for me, Jake, is I think we know what Mike Gesicki's going to bring, what Trenton Irwin's going to bring, even to a certain degree, what we could see from Andrei Iosivas. Obviously, he could take a step forward. But does Charlie Jones look comfortable in the slot? Does he show all of the things they thought he could do? Does he put that on display this offseason and in training camp? Because if so, then I think he could play more than people realize, because he didn't play much last year. So it's really hard to bank on that. But if he comes in and shows he can play slot, I think they'd be more than willing to put him out.
I do think it's a really interesting battle, and I would have something of a hard time handicapping where I would say each guy would fit in terms of who's going to play the most in the slot. I don't think that answer is clear. We didn't talk about Trenton Irwin. You mentioned him, I guess, that they brought him back. I think he's in that rotation as well. So they got 4 guys, including Gesicki, that all could have roles in different parts of the field. And really the question is, who's the most versatile piece out of those guys? Who's the most comfortable working each level of the field, working over the inside, working those Tyler Boyd option routes? Because the question of whether Jermaine Burton is a natural fit for Tyler Boyd's slot position from Jeff, I don't think he is. I don't think that he's the guy that is the natural pure slot that Tyler Boyd was. Tyler Boyd is a really high-level slot receiver in the NFL. He has been since he broke out with Cincinnati, essentially, and he's been good in that role with Joe Burrow as well. And one of the big things that's really important for that role is seeing the field the same way as Burrow, figuring out where he should be breaking on those option routes where he has a three-way go, and which player steps into that role and sees that part of the game the same way as Joe Burrow is probably the player that's on the field the most, because that's the bread and butter of the slot position, both that and the ability to block in the run game. Those are two things that are going to get players onto the field in those situations. But to your point, when they want to push the field vertically, in that old 9-8-9 play, right, where you have two verticals on the outside and Tyler Boyd in the slot would have the option to run a post or run a dig. For the most part, Tyler Boyd's running a dig there. Last year, we saw Charlie Jones take off on a post, and one play he didn't run through it and could have caught a touchdown. On another one, the quarterback didn't see him and should have triggered on the alert. A lot of times that post part of the 9-8-9 pattern is an alert where if you get a certain coverage, that's where the ball goes, but it's not necessarily a primary on the play. Well, if you have Jermaine Burton in that role or Charlie Jones competing for that role, or even Iosivas, he could certainly compete for it. How does that change year over year? Where's Charlie Jones' growth, to your point, year over year? Because the Bengals did use a pretty high pick on him last year, expecting him to potentially be the slot receiver of the future. And then they come back this year and use a higher pick on Jermaine Burton, who last year for Alabama played about 20% of his snaps in the slot, a much more vertical offense for Alabama last year. 2 years ago, though, was 40% in the slot. So it's not like he's a stranger to playing in the slot. I just don't think he's the pure slot that Tyler Boyd was, because Boyd did it at such a high level and is such a veteran, especially the last few years, right, where he is the quintessential slot receiver in that Bengals offense. And I don't think that Burton is going to hit the ground running and be that kind of slot receiver right away.
And I don't think they want him to. I think they want him to give them something new. Last week, Joe Burrow mentioned explosiveness. He was asked about, oh, well, injury-wise, if you guys had stayed healthy, would you have made the run? He was like, we were too inconsistent, not explosive. Like right away, just like, they need to be explosive. And getting Jermaine Burton on the field certainly helps that. That might mean him playing outside a decent amount. It could mean him playing in the slot a decent amount, but that doesn't mean that he's going to only be there. And I think that's what's interesting about this offense. And in a best case scenario, best case world, Charlie Jones takes a step forward. Andrei Iosivas takes a step forward. And those guys, along with Jermaine Burton and Jamar Chase, you can envision, those are your four wide receivers. Not that they wouldn't take one next year or anything like that, but those are your four wide receivers that really can stabilize your future at that position. And who knows, maybe they keep T. This isn't a T Higgins future thing, but he's not under contract after this year. Technically, he's not under contract right now. We do know he's going to play on the tag, but that would be the best case scenario, is Jermaine Burton shows that inside-outside flex, allows you to move Jamar around as well. You have your almost pure slot and Charlie Jones, he comes along, and then you have Andrei Iosivas, who can do a bunch of different things and is that a elite athlete that you're probably putting on the outside a lot.
And the mismatch of Mike Gesicki,
for this year, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for this year. Who we think is going to play a solid amount of essentially wide receiver 3. To answer Steve's question, to try to predict it, I know it feels like a cop-out, but as of today, until somebody, in training camp runs away with the job and blows us away in a series of practices in training camp in the preseason, it really does feel like a wide receiver 3 by committee right now, where these guys are going to rotate. And I know it's not like Charlie Jones is going to win that job kind of answer, or Jermaine Burton's going to come in and be so much better than these guys that they're going to have no choice but give him the job. It's not that answer, at least today in May, and we'll see what happens in camp. I will say that it will be nice to have Jermaine Burton, because we do not expect T. Higgins to be there for the offseason program in the early part of training camp, as he's, to your point, not under contract right now. So having Jermaine Burton to be that wide receiver and getting those reps, I think will be a benefit to him and a benefit to the team. Coming up next, another set of questions here about what's next for the Bengals between now and camp. Will they add more veteran depth? Maybe get them in for the offseason program. We'll go there next.
Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app you need to download right now because the NFL schedule, it's almost here. Wednesday night, it'll be here. We'll obviously have your instant reaction on Locked On Bengals, and Game Time is the place you need to go to get tickets. So whether it's the Bengals when they play on the road to Kansas City, whether it's their home opener, maybe it's opening the season at home, maybe you're looking for some preseason contests for the kids, which are perfect games to take the kids to. Well, Game Time is going to be able to get you tickets. You're going to be able to get your tickets through Game Time really, really easy. They have last minute deals as well. So it's not just NFL schedule release. You can get your last minute tickets to the Reds or to your favorite concert this summer, or maybe the NBA playoffs. They're all in pricing, allows you to know your total upfront. So there's no hidden fees. You know what you're going to get with views from your seat. Download Game Time today and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
James, our next series of questions, we've got a group here we're going to put together, is all about, will the Bengals make an addition? You got Mr. Irish Red asking, what's a legitimate roster addition you can see the Bengals making? You've got Bryson Miracle asking, do you think we can expect to see any moves on the interior offensive line? A lot of people asking about Dalton Reisner throughout the offseason at various points. Clinton Boring, speaking of interior offensive lineman, Clinton Boring, will the Bengals add veteran free agent depth at running back or defensive tackle, especially running back, he asked. What's the plan if Moss and or Brown go down? And Donnie Venable, who are the backups going to be on the interior offensive line, especially if they don't make a move? Depth there looks pretty thin. So a lot of questions there about depth signings, interior offensive line, running back, maybe defensive tackle. What are your thoughts? We talked about this a little bit last week, but can you expect the Bengals to make a move there?
I think that they make a move or two. And I think that's the important part about the next few weeks. Rookie minicamp last week, this week, and maybe into next week, you can evaluate your rookies with the veterans, evaluate the roster, and then say, okay, you know, if you're Trey Brown, by the way, check out our Trey Brown interview if you haven't yet. Shout out to all the love that people have given that interview. But then Trey Brown's like, okay, well, here's our list. Him and Duke and Mike Potts and Steve Radisevich. Here's our list. Who should we potentially target? They talk with the coaching staff. I think that will happen. Where is interesting because interior offensive line, it's something you would have addressed earlier in the draft. I would have addressed earlier in the draft. Nothing against Matt Lee. I want a guy who can play guard too. And maybe they're comfortable with Cody Ford, Jackson Carman, those guys, and Trey Hill. Those are the guys that are on the roster that would slate to be in that range. It doesn't feel like they think Amarius Mims or want Amarius Mims to take reps at guard, which I get. I understand that. Have him compete at right tackle and get all those left and right tackle reps. He can be your swing tackle worst case this year. But the interior part of it, I think there is a discussion there because I think they're viewing it as, yeah, we have a potential backup for Ted Karras in Matt Lee, and we feel pretty comfortable with what we have at guard because we were able to re-sign Cody Ford. Jackson Carman's in the final year of his deal. I'm not saying you or I are comfortable with it, but it feels like that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think if they were going to make a move, interior offensive line doesn't feel like the most likely, especially a Reisner. I'm not sure actually which is right for his name.
Doesn't matter.
I don't think that's likely.
Yeah, I don't either.
And so who are the backups? Well, Cody Ford was their first offensive lineman off the bench last year. And I think he remains in the coaching staff's good graces. They think he is a great depth piece to have, regardless of what we think on the outside or what you think listening to this episode. Cody Ford is probably going to be one of the depth pieces. I think Jackson Carman is probably going to be one of the depth pieces. He's played tackle for them. He's played guard for them. He has not lived up to a second-round draft pick for a guy who should have been for that draft status, a starting guard for this team. But I think that he will continue to play a backup role in his last year of his deal. And that's what it is for Jackson Carman. 2024, 2021 rookie, last year of his deal. And then there's one spot. I think realistically, unless somebody comes into camp and blows away the competition again and has a stellar showing in the preseason and in camp, it's Matt Lee, Trey Hill, Jackson Kirkland for one spot. And I don't think Jackson Kirkland's playing center. So I think it's a tough road for Jackson Kirkland and guys like Nate Gilliam and Deontay Smith. And everybody knows how we think Matt Lee fits in. And Trey Hill continues to be on the team, but like Jackson Carman, has not really lived up to the level they thought he would get to. They thought, maybe he came out a year early, but they thought there was a lot of development there. They thought that there was athleticism that he didn't test with, that he would reach that potential in the NFL. Haven't seen it yet. Haven't seen that level of consistency yet. So could they use a piece there? Absolutely. But it doesn't seem like the most likely place they would make a move. Meanwhile, they drafted 2 defensive tackles.
Hold on. Just with offensive line, one camp battle that I think will be a battle. I don't think Jackson Carman is guaranteed to make this roster. I think Deontay Smith could, and I'm not saying you were, but you're just naming the guys. Deontay Smith versus Jackson Carman, the battle of the two, what should have been mid-rounders from 2021. I think that's pretty real going into camp.
Yeah, I think that Carman is probably the favorite as of today. If I were handicapping it today, I would say Carman is the favorite in my mind, but there could be a battle there. But, I feel like I've expected a battle for Jackson Carman the last couple of years. And he's
lost
ended
all
up on
those
the team.
battles. What do you mean?
Well, he's ended up on the team.
Well,
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So is Deontay Smith and Trey Hill. All 3 of those guys have stuck on the roster as backups.
The mid-round trio from 2021. That's what we should call them. And it's really a slight at Jackson because he wasn't a mid-rounder.
and a little bit of a bonus for Trey Hill, a 6th-round pick.
That's
that
true.
A mid-round.
There we go. Balances out.
They drafted 2 defensive tackles. So are they satisfied with that room? Again, another spot where we would like to see them add depth, but they might be sitting there thinking, well, we got Jay Tufele off waivers from Jacksonville. We like that depth piece. We got Travis Bell. Don't forget that waiver claim from the Atlanta Falcons. And maybe they see that as a quality depth piece. But another spot
who's out there? That's my question. Calais Campbell, of course, or Calais, but who else?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? And then the other one would be corner, where, again, I can still see them adding a piece, but none of these feel terribly likely, and they did draft Josh Newton, of course, to play corner. So where are they adding a depth piece? I could see them making a move running back. That one behind the top 2, as Clinton Boring points out.
It's Jerick McKinnon's music.
But trying to pick multiple or even identify which one is kind of hard. I would expect at least a move or 2. They have open roster spots.
No, and they need to add. They should add. And I think they will. Now, it might not be and I say big names in quotes, but the names we're talking about, it might be someone else. It might not be the big names that we're discussing. They may add a defensive tackle, and it's just someone that's under the radar, or add a running back that's under the radar. I mean, McKinnon, to me, makes some sense from a pass catching role. And if he's your 3, even if you don't trust, or your 3A because you trust Travion Williams to pass block, okay, well, then he can be your 3A where he's the one catching passes out of the backfield. I don't know. I think that could make sense if you get him for $1 million or something.
I don't think they're signing Jerick McKinnon to be the 4th running back, to be honest.
3rd? Like in a rotation? You know what I'm saying?
Well, but you're not activating 4 running backs unless 2 of them are playing, and Travion Williams does, heavy special team snaps. I know they did at times last year, but they preferred to have 3 running backs up, and I think that is their preference for the most part. So you would have to have some pretty clear roles in mind for those guys, I think. And it would be depth. Injuries happen, right? And so that's probably part of the equation.
That's what's interesting about this year is, like we talked about receiver, how it's going to change. Running back is going to change too. And that's why I'm surprised. I think we were both surprised they didn't draft one, because I felt like they were going to go committee, like heavy committee. And instead it looks like it's a 1-2 punch again. And what depth do you have behind those guys? Travion Williams, and then that's it. Chris Evans, who they clearly don't trust.
And maybe it's just big time Chase Brown show coming to town. Zach Moss, 3rd down back roll. We'll find out soon enough. Coming up next, let's discuss the safety battles expected in camp, and we'll see if we have time for some rapid fire at the end of the episode. But next, Jordan battle, Vonn Bell. Who comes out of that battle on top?
Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and in the NHL with the playoffs in full swing. Maybe you think that the Timberwolves are going to figure it out after dropping 2 straight to the Nuggets. By the way, going into this series, I can't believe everyone dismissed the Timberwolves and thought that the Nuggets were going to handle business. And then down 2-0, you thought that the reigning champs were just going to roll over. Of course they weren't. So who do you have in game 5? Well, get to FanDuel right now, and new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So throw $5 on the Timberwolves, or throw $5 on the Nuggets, or maybe you want to get into Major League Baseball, NHL playoffs. All of those things can be wagered on, including spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
James, let's go to a question from Lorenzo Smith about Jordan Battle, who ranked very highly for PFF, as Lorenzo points out. Is that a real roster battle? Jordan Battle, Vonn Bell for the starting safety spot. Are we going to see, speaking of rotations, running back, wide receiver, a safety rotation? It does seem a little bit hard to believe that Jordan Battle, who came on and played well for them down the stretch last year for the most part as a 3rd-round pick, is just going to take a redshirt year suddenly and go to the bench with Vonn Bell arriving. How do you see that battle playing out?
Well, buckle up and prepare yourself, because I think Vonn Bell is going to start. That doesn't mean that we won't see more of Jordan Battle than we've seen safety number 3 this year. And by the way, if Battle beats out Bell, then I think we'll still see Bell more than we've seen safety number 3. So that part applies regardless of the competition. But Vonn Bell didn't come here to be Uncle Mike Thomas. He came here to play, and he's got to earn that, of course. But if there was a game tomorrow, he's starting. I'm pretty confident in that. Doesn't mean it won't be a competition. Of course it will. But Battle's going to have to continue to develop, continue to show everyone that he's ready to go, that he's going to be able to not only earn the trust of the coaching staff, but beat out a guy in Vonn Bell who is held in really, really, really high regard. And that's much easier said than done. So does Battle have a shot? Absolutely. Is the job going to be handed to him and Vonn Bell be the veteran that mentors these guys and helps communication? Hell no. Do I think that safety number 3 is going to play a bit more this year? Absolutely. Because if you have Bell or Battle, you feel pretty good about that 3rd safety spot. And so I do think that either one of those guys will play, and we know what's going to happen. Geno Stone's going to be the Jesse Bates and be back there for probably 100% of the snaps always.
Or the Dax Hill, because Dax Hill played about 100% of the snaps last year.
See, but people are going to look down on that if you say it that way. So I don't want to.
The point I'm trying to make is the Bengals will have one likely full-time safety, or I don't know, maybe this is the year they finally do that 3 safety stuff we've been talking about since they drafted Dax Hill.
If they did that and move Dax to safety or move Dax to corner, I would be so annoyed.
Well, and remember,
ways to annoy James.
When they signed Ricardo Allen, the Lou Anarumo connection there, like we were like, yeah, 3 safety stuff. And we've been talking about this for forever.
Is he coaching? He always wanted to coach. I'm going to look up Ricardo Allen.
And they haven't really leaned into the 3 safety sets a ton. And again, this year they have the personnel on paper to do it, with Dax Hill being a potential. I mean, if he doesn't win a starting job,
yeah, he coaches for the Dolphins.
There you go. That makes sense.
He's 4 months younger than me.
You could have been a coach, James.
Already retired. 5'9", 190. How about that? We're pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close to the same.
You missed your calling.
He just has 7 more years of experience.
You focus so much on playing wide receiver. You missed your calling as a safety and slot corner.
Ricardo Allen couldn't cover me.
But could you cover Ricardo Allen?
No, but he's the defensive back. I'm just letting you know.
I feel like that is
someone
a bold
send
claim.
Him that.
Yeah.
Of course it's bold. Let's
get Ricardo
let's
Allen
get
is
back
probably down in Miami running with the DBs like Troy
Yeah.
runs with the wide receivers in Cincinnati.
No doubt. I'm sure he is. I would.
At 34, 35? How old is he?
He's 32, Jake.
32?
You don't know my age?
No.
He's 4 months younger than me.
No,
You don't know
definitely
my age.
don't know your age. So, point is, probably a battle there for Jordan Battle and Vonn Bell at safety. I think that is a roster competition. I think that, again, it's hard for me to imagine a world where Jordan Battle just plays special teams and is coming off the bench the entire year. Because he was playing well for them down the stretch, and he earned his starting job last year. And so it's hard to imagine that he just totally falls out of favor. And so it will be interesting to see how they work that rotation out.
I think I think there is a world where Jordan Battle is Vonn Bell's backup and Tyson Anderson is Geno Stone's backup. A world. Not saying it's the world, a world. Just saying it. Think about it. What if Dax Hill thrives at safety? Or why do I keep saying that? At corner. He's never going to be able to play safety again
it's a Freudian slip
on this team. But what if he does? Then you're never moving him back.
Right.
And so I do think that there's a scenario. And they probably wouldn't put him at deep safety anyway. So there you go.
Let's sneak one more question in here, James. John Callison. Do you think the Bengals have enough juice to stop the run this year? Last year was concerning with Reader off the field, and now they don't have the true run stopper that DJ Reader was, unless Chris Jenkins shows out as a rookie. Do you expect them to hold up in the division in run D?
Do I expect them to? Yeah. Does it need to happen? Absolutely. Look, you got to make Baltimore throw it. That's it. Cover the tight ends, make them throw it to the outside, deep, all of those things, and try to push it to the boundary. All of those things that they've struggled with. They're not a pass first team. Do you want Russell Wilson to throw it, or do you want the Steelers to be able to run it? Force these guys to throw. Same thing with Deshaun Watson. So you have to do that. But is it going to look like it did with DJ Reader when they were really good at stopping the run? No. DJ Reader isn't here, and McKinley Jackson isn't DJ Reader. Chris Jenkins isn't DJ Reader. Any of these guys you want to mention, they're not DJ Reader. But could they still find ways to stop the run? And can they? Is that realistic? Sheldon Rankins and BJ Hill and these linebackers. I think so. And that's part of why I think Vonn Bell will be on the field. It's part of why if you're Dax Hill, you want to win that cornerback job, be able to tackle and tackle an open space against these running backs, which we saw last year at times, and do that better than DJ Turner. That's a big part of it. So yeah, I think so. I think that it will be better because it was pretty bad anyways, but it's going to look different. And how much better? That's the question. It's a big question when it comes to this team. But should we expect it to be better? Yeah, because they were awful at it last year.
I think a big part of the upgrade here is improving your depth behind the starters, because when it was Zach Carter and Josh Tupou on the field last year, it did not go well for the Bengals in run defense, or Jay Tufele even, who still is on the team, flashed at times. I don't say this to tear any of those guys down, but the results were generally not great when they went to the backup defensive line. Getting Sam Hubbard healthy, not playing on a leg and a half, will help. Getting a better rotation, maybe Miles Murphy taking a step on the edge could help, and keeping guys fresher could help. Chris Jenkins should be able to come in and make an impact in the run game. I don't think he'll be DJ Reader, as you said, James, because DJ Reader is one of the best nose tackles, one of the best run defending players in the league. But Chris Jenkins' calling card, and part of the reason he got drafted where he did, was that he is a block defeater. He can get off of him, and he can make plays in the run game. And that's going to be part of his role in Cincinnati. It's just going to look a little bit different than DJ Reader holding up two offensive linemen and then shedding them both to make a tackle at the line of scrimmage, right? It's a different kind of player because Chris Jenkins isn't that right now. But improving their depth at defensive tackle should help, hypothetically. And Sam Hubbard being healthy, being one of the better run defenders on the team, should help, hypothetically. The last thing I'd say...
The floor is much higher for that room.
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be. You hope it is. If it's not, they've got a major problem with the way they put the roster together, and
you got to score 40.
Go was a big problem, and they will need a lot of points from the offense, right? The last thing I'll say, you mentioned Dax Hill in run defense. I hope that they don't totally scrap his role of matching up with tight ends, because that's a way to get him into the box where he is a very good run defender. Last year, one of his best abilities was in run defense. And so it's a way to get him on the field in the box. Call it a 3 safety look if you want, even though he's a cornerback now in terms of what room he's meeting with. But if they can maintain that role for him, it gives him an opportunity to contribute in run defense as well, which is something he was good at last year.
That's what's so interesting with Bell Battle is those guys can't cover like Dax. Like, yeah, it's not even close. Sorry, I'm not trying to be mean to those guys, but yeah, you want him in the game. And so maybe they by default have to go 3 safeties. And even though he's a corner, plays that safety role some. But you're right, the run defense part of it's by committee. This is the theme of the show, committee. All 3 segments it comes up. And I think that's how you replace DJ Reader is DT 3 and 4, you hope are better. And you hope all the pieces around DT 1 and 2 are better. And by the way, the linebackers, they're going to have to be better this year. There's no doubt about it. They have to be better. They were in uncharted territory last year, new waters. I get it. Time to rebound it and play at a high level.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you made some great points about the AFC North. The way you got to win probably still starts with stopping the run. Even though Russell Wilson's going to throw some moon balls, he's going to try. He has the receivers to go catch them. But you make those teams throw.
Intercepted by Dax Hill. Oh.
You see what happens when the Ravens have to be one-dimensional in the AFC Championship game last year. Maybe we'll see it again in the season kickoff game this year. They go to Kansas City for that first game of the season, apparently. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Again, appreciate all the questions. We've got some coverage from the Bengals offseason program coming your way for our next episode. Right, James?
Yep. We'll be there at Paycor Stadium tomorrow watching Joey B and company.
And we'll keep an eye on how all of that's playing out. The rookies and veterans together for the first time. You'll see our first Joe Burrow to Jermaine Burton pass, I assume.
Burrow to Burton, touchdown. You think Dan Horde's going to do play-by-play?
No.
I wonder.
Like tomorrow? That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.